Well, welcome everybody to the Global Transformation Project. Hope everyone's doing well. This is a monthly program where you can meet researchers of mind-body practices. Our mission is to educate the public about the far-reaching health and cost savings of these practices while providing the science behind them. We encourage you all to sign our petition to the UN to make these practices available in our educational systems worldwide. Our website, just simply type in globaltransformationproject.org, has the link to the petition as well as a ton of information. We are all volunteers, including our guests in this program. There is no large overhead, and we kindly ask for your generous donation, however small, to help us manage our frugal costs. We are a legitimate 501c3 institution, and your donations are tax deductible, like your t-shirt bill. Please donate. There is a donate button on our website.
Is there?
Yes, there is.
Okie dokie.
I am Siobhan, and with me are the founders of the Global Transformation Project. It's Bill Douglas, and Angela is probably somewhere in the background. So both Bill and Angela Douglas are known for the World Tai Chi and Qigong Day for founding that, but they are also the founders and the reason we're here for the Global Transformation Project. And Dr. CJ Rhodes will be joining us in a little bit, and the four of us comprise this team. So thank you and welcome everybody. And Bill, I'm going to add Dr. Gayl and take myself off spotlight, but is there something that you would like to bring up before we begin?
Well, I just have a quick comment about this production, and then are you gonna?
Oh, wait.
Yeah, do you have Gayl's bio?
I'm so sorry, Bill. I thought for a minute we weren't recording. Please forgive me.
Oh, that's okay.
We are recording, so go ahead.
Oh, that's good. Okay, so everything got recorded, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, do you have Gayl's bio?
Well, I can tell you a bit about Gayl, but I don't have a formal...
Okay, well, before you introduce Gayl via her bio, I just wanted to mention just real quick, this discussion series, this monthly discussion series, Dr. CJ Rhodes and Siobhan Hutchinson here has really been the backbone of this thing. And this has been one of the most extraordinary experiences of my life. Because as I mentioned before we turned the cameras on, this is the most important science being done in the history of science, according to Nikola Tesla. And I don't think there's anybody in science that could argue with Nikola Tesla. And so, you know, these people should be on all the major TV programs talking about the science that we expose people to in this extraordinary series that's Dr. CJ Rhodes and Siobhan Hutchinson have made possible. And it's just, you know, we organized World Tai Chi Day, which Princeton University Director of Research showed how we had actually changed global consciousness. But I've got to tell you, you know, even though we've experienced doing Tai Chi with the whole planet for 24 years now, and that we actually changed global consciousness, this discussion series has been like the most spectacular event of my life. To have the ability to sit here with these folks and talk about the most important science being done in the history of science. And this platform provides data and science and information that has profoundly changed not only the way I do Tai Chi and Qigong and meditation, but the way I teach Tai Chi and Qigong and meditation, and the way that I do everything in my life. This has been truly life transformative for me to be exposed to all this data and all this information about these mind-body practices that I've been doing for 45 years. And I don't think there's a mind-body person on the planet who wouldn't experience the same benefits that I have from this discussion series. So it's really important that everybody share these videos that we produce for free. And we bring some of the top scientists on who appear here for free. And all what we ask is that people spread this stuff out, because the YouTube algorithms don't help. They don't help. We don't get the exposure through the YouTube algorithms. If it was something, that got, that agitated people, then it would get a lot of clicks because they'd promote that stuff. That's it. This is all, real data on social media, how it operates. It operates on conflict, not solutions. And so each one of us is really powerful if we spread this information out. And so we depend on you guys to be posting all this work that we do for free out there everywhere and anywhere that you can. And so now, if you have Gayl's bio, I would love to hear that.
Okay. Well, first of all, I'd like to say we were all three of us, and including CJ and Angela, actually more, were at the Osher conference in Boston that was produced by the Harvard Medical School. And that was the first time we got to actually meet in person. And I have to say personally, Dr. Gayl is a lovely human being, and she walks the walk. She is a traditional Chinese medicine practitioner. She has her own acupuncture practice, which includes herbs as well. And she also is a Tai Chi Qigong teacher and is very active in the community, as well as HeartMATH. So she has a extensive background in this field, and she's written, if you could give me 1 second, I'm going to pop in myself to show you that she had spent years working on a book. I'm going to add spotlight. And CJ just came on, so I'll be bringing CJ on. But fabric, this happened last time. Don't worry. Fabric of the Soul is
I'll
just
put it in
wonderful. Yes, it's on the slides. It's just years worth of study. Now, some of you who may have studied Donna Eden's work may know these as the radiant circuits. And Dr. Gayl will go into this more, but there's not like a lot of ancient literature written about it. But yet Dr. Gayl came up with this beautiful book full of resources explaining in detail how she utilizes them in her practice. And I am so grateful for Tom Rogers for bringing the book to my attention. And Dr. Rhodes is with us. So CJ, would you like to just pop in real quick and say hello?
Hi, CJ. You're muted.
Oh, yeah.
I don't see her muted, but maybe she's not.
I can't hear.
Maybe her mic's not on.
No, she is muted.
Okay. CJ, we'll come back to you later. Okay. So you're going to do the spotlighting, and I'm going to disappear, and Bill and Dr. Gayl, take it away.
Thank you, Siobhan. So I am thrilled to be here, and thank you, Bill and all, for inviting me to come on this project. I am so supportive of what you've been doing, Bill, and what you're doing here. It's like you said, it's the most important science we have today, particularly post-pandemic, when so many people have nervous or anxious conditions that they don't really know what to do with. And so there's more impact on the healthcare system, more medication being prescribed. When you and I and others know in this field that the ability to self-regulate is really just what we need to do and learn and practice every day. If everybody learned how to self-regulate, which means balance the nervous system and get in touch with their interior self, the world would be a different place. And so I love that you're starting with children and putting a focus and emphasis on the public schools, because as we know, it's really, they have a lot of troubles. And I got to tell you, I still have an acupuncture practice. I've really scaled back in this point in my career. I've been in practice for at least 35 years. I started early. I was, like you, one of the pioneers in this country to bring Chinese medicine to America and to practice these arts and to teach them, because back then I started in the early 80s. You had to become a teacher because nobody knew what you were talking about or had the experience of it. And so over time, it's been so gratifying to see the field grow and expand. And now, we're in the healthcare system, acupuncture is, and the Tai Chi and Qigong whole health conference that Siobhan mentioned at Harvard that we were all in attendance of was such a groundbreaking event to really educate the public of, wait a minute, there are scientists from all over the world, and major ones, Harvard funded, that are researching, creating evidence-based studies to prove that these practices work. And we know it just from our own experience. And what I find is that once people have an experience of what their chi is and what this idea of self-regulation is, then your life is different. It's changed because you can always go back there, and the body has memory. And so it's easier to cultivate and to go back there and to stay more in sync with yourself. So it's just such a pleasure to be here. And I'm not sure if you have a format for this. I know I just launched in.
Well, if there's anything that you want to talk about, go for it. But yeah, we could open it up a little bit as well. So whatever you.
There's actually a lot I want to talk about.
Okay. Well, I'm
I
anxious to hear
actually thought, Bill, since it's a mixed audience, that if we could just step back a little bit and explain what is acupuncture, and then give a snapshot, and then go into the 8 extraordinary vessels. If your book.
Yeah, I that's what I thought, that I would come back to some of the origins of this science and the practice. So, Western medicine is based on an allopathic approach, which is, you have a disease, you create an environment internally, usually with chemicals that will target the disease and handle it. But it's not a whole body, whole health viewpoint. Eastern medicine, which Chinese medicine has been seriously cultivated for thousands of years. The Indian Vedic traditions are even older than Chinese medicine, and both of them are parallel, just different cultures and different languages. And so what the Chinese discovered long ago, when they were living in the natural world under the stars, with the seasonal changes, without electricity and the distractions we have in modern society, they recognized that their health was related to nature. And they started watching animals and studying plants and finding practices where they felt stronger. And over time, many doctors, got together. This was one of the early books is called the Neijing and the Nanjing. And they wrote treatises of what they found in their patients. And so the culmination and combination of all these different approaches became one of the classical texts that we still use today, that is hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years old, and it still rings true. And the basic premise is that we have life force energy. We call it chi in that's a Chinese word that we translate to mean energy or life force. In India, it's prana, which relates to the breath. In Chinese medicine, we also use the breath because the lungs conduct qi in the body. In Japan, it's ki. All of the ancient traditions in the world have a word for this idea of the life force that lives within us.
You know, Gayl, I've been struggling for 45 years of how to explain this to people. And the progress that I've made so far is when I get new students and start a new class, I tell them what these ancient Chinese researchers and Indian researchers realized is that all we are is energy. We're just an energy field. Now, what's mind-boggling is, that's what any modern quantum physicist will tell you as well. So how did they know this, hundreds and thousands of years ago? And then the next step that I explained to them is what they realized is that this energy field that we are, it can get squeezed and tight and constricted, from the thoughts and emotions and things that we encounter. But through a combination of breathing, visualization, and gentle movement exercises, they realized that you could allow this energy field that you are to expand open to that natural flow of life energy or bioenergy or whatever. So anyway, that's where I'm at so far, is explaining that to new students.
Yeah, exactly. That it involves three things. One is the breath and movement, and then the focus of attention and intention. So those are the three principles also in the yogic tradition that we use in Qigong and Tai Chi. And when we bring those three together, what science has proven is that our nervous system, the parasympathetic, which is that rest and digest part of us, and the sympathetic, the fight, flight, or freeze part, right, the stress response, start to balance. And so the way that qi flows through the body, it has a natural intelligence to balance itself. Just like you cut your finger, and if you clean it out, it will heal. The body knows how to heal itself. And so these practices were designed to bring the body and the mind and our spirit, our divine nature, into a relative balance so that the body can heal, the emotions can regulate, the spirit can be awakened. And so from that viewpoint, it's very simple. And that's why I love, the focus of working with children, because children naturally know how to do this. The babies breathe into their belly because it relaxes their body. As children, develop their more young, we call it more yang nature. They're very active, and running around, and they have a lot of energy, right? But they also, if given a loving environment, will know when they need to rest and calm down, need a hug. Or my little granddaughter, who's 5, she'll always crack a joke when she feels tense. She already has that in her psyche.
Gayl, this is please hold your train of thought, because this is so fascinating. But I have a little bit of surprise to show you, because we have discussed our grandchildren earlier, and I've got a really short, mind-blowing video that I wanted to show. So can I do a share screen, Siobhan, for a couple minutes? Okay, thank you. Yeah, this is going to blow your mind, to just show how naturally this stuff comes to children. This video really blow your mind.
I don't think we see it yet.
Oh, okay. All right. I think let me try to share again. Okay, here we go. All right. I'm doing good now. Okay, so I've got that. Now let me go to, I need to drag this somewhere. Okay, here we go. All right. So this is my granddaughter when she was fresh out of the delivery room, pretty fresh. Here she goes. Now, I just want to call your attention to something real quick before I get back to this. Is what I want to call your attention to is look at the intensity with which she's watching Tai Chi at her age. I mean, the intensity of focus at her age. And also, what you'll see is her trying to mimic my Tai Chi movements. And she's fresh. She's pretty fresh out of the hospital. You'll see.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really mind blowing. Here you go. And she was like this for 40 minutes. 40 minutes. So now let me. Okay, now this is her at 7 years old, right here. Okay, so now let me just stop share. There we go. Okay.
What a sweetheart.
Yeah, I mean, it's been, you had mentioned when we were conversing through email about the influence of your grandchildren on kind of where where you've gone consciously with mind body possibilities. And yeah, it's been huge with me because I've been able to actually see hands-on how instantly accessible this is to kids. And it's not like I try to teach them, I don't tell them, okay, put your foot here, put your hand here. I just do it in front of them. I just do it around them. And I don't care whether they're paying attention to me, and they absorb all kinds of stuff. It's like a day later or a week later or whatever, I'll see them doing something or repeating something. And so in no way do I push it on them or anything like that, but I'm constantly exposing them to it.
Oh, that's beautiful. I read a study someone did, I can't remember who at the moment, that said people watching Tai Chi automatically become relaxed. Like
yeah, they should stress.
Do it. It's just watching it.
Yeah, people's stress responses go down watching Tai Chi. They've studied that.
Yeah, that's interesting.
There's something organic and transcendental about it. You know what I mean? It's more than just seeing the physical movements. There's a whole energy thing going on.
Well, I love this conversation, and I want to go back to one of the experiences I had that led me into Eastern medicine, because let's face it, I'm a white girl from Chicago, born, bred in the Midwest, went through the Catholic schools and the whole bit. I have a big, huge family there, and also West Coast. And let's see, in college, I met my first husband. We had a child together. And it was through that natural birth that I had the most extraordinary experience. I mean, I know sounds odd because people think, oh, birth is painful, and it is. But what I felt was this just chi, this energy of life, that comes through. And then it was, to me, it was just the most profound experience of my life. And
how would you describe that? How the feeling?
Well, I was in my early 20s. I had my daughter pretty young. And so I didn't have a lot of mental constraints that I see with women as if they give birth older in life. Mm-hmm. And so I have to say, honestly, that might have been part of it. But I just allowed myself, I was living in Oregon at the time, and we were really with the forest, we were living in the rainforest, and I was really connected to nature. And I just allowed the experience to happen. And it was like this vibration, when the contractions came on, it's a vibration. And I chose to use my breath and some mindful practices that I had learned through midwives and other practitioners to just not attach to, oh, this is intense, but just let it come through me. And that vibration, would come through. And instead of feeling contracted in myself and my heart, my mind, or whatever, I felt expanded. And I literally had this expanded experience when she was born. And it was one of the main experiences that led me to Eastern medicine, because I thought, what is this? I did not have any idea of Eastern philosophy before that. But as the universe, does, like, right, like attracts like, I had this feeling and this desire to know more about how we interact with life and with the universe and nature. And then I met an acupuncturist. I learned about Taoism, and all of it started rolling in.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to share something with you because it really struck me. And that's why I wanted to know kind of what the sensation of it was, the experience, because I had a really extraordinary experience like that as well. Just where it just took me. It's like I wasn't trying or anything. It was just like overwhelming, like a tidal wave of energy. Huge, like what you're talking about, that just kind of comes like a wave. And what happened with me was my youngest son. He went into a coma about a month before he was going to be a year old, and he ended up going to the hospital. And so my wife was basically by his bedside for the whole month. But I kind of pulled away from it during that month because I had to watch our other two kids, which were older. And so I was, I was in my mid-20s at the time. I wasn't ready for this to have a kid in a coma in the hospital and all that. And so I had the kids at home, but I was like drinking beers constantly, just to kind of be able to keep some kind of semblance of normalcy. And so I kind of emotionally pulled away from what was going on at the hospital. I mean, I was there every day, but not like my wife. And then what happened was one night the hospital called up and they said, you need to come in because we had agreed that if his heart failed again, that we were going to go ahead and turn off the machines. And so they called me up. And so I got the kids in the car middle of the night, and a nurse watched the kids. And then I went into Isaac's room, and they had him on the machines, and they were getting ready to turn off the machine. And the doctor said, he said, do you want to hold him while we do it? And I said, nah, I said, I don't want to. I had just emotionally jaded myself, from this. And I just looked at him, and I didn't think that was him. I thought it was like a physical body that wasn't really him. And then there was like a voice in the back of my head that said, you need to do this. You have to do this. And so I told him, okay. And so I sat down, they put him in my arms, and I didn't feel like it was him. I felt, you know what I mean? I had just put myself in that space. But when they turned off the machine and the line went flat, I had this most extraordinary experience. I mean, it was like he went through me, and it changed me forever. And that was a big, huge part of what led me to 40 years of collecting science on consciousness and all this stuff. Those kind of moments like you're talking about.
Oh, bless you. Thank you for sharing that tender story. Siobhan had mentioned the 8 extraordinary vessels, and to me, this is maybe a segue into it, because in the early stages of life, in embryological development and through birthing and the early years of a child's life, there's a template of energy that is forming as the cells get together and grow and divide into more complexity. Organs are formed, the nervous system. The heart is, by the way, the heart is actually the first organ that forms in the body and is the main organ of our consciousness. We call it the seat of consciousness. So clearly there was a connection, Bill, with you and your son in heart space, if you will, right? And our heart mind, and the Chinese call it heart mind, our consciousness really resides in our heart, because as human beings we're mind and feeling oriented. And as the child grows, there's a template of chi that's called the extraordinary vessels, and there's an impulse, a motivation to regulate, to move in cyclical ways, just like the earth revolves around the sun and the planets in our solar system revolve in the galaxy, and the galaxies revolve in the universes. It's this natural and consistent, coherent way that life moves and forms. And it sounds to me like what you just described, Bill, was this moment where you were connected to the essence of that.
Yeah. One of the things that as you were talking, that I realized that changed in me after that is every time I looked at somebody that was younger than me, I felt like on some level that they were my child. You know what I mean? And now I'm 66 years old, so that means that 50-year-old people look like my, and I'm not saying, that it made me a saint or anything like that. I mean, I'm perfectly capable of being a jerk, because, we're human beings, but it did change me. It's like I just started seeing everybody differently. It was like it was a universal event, this heart, and it was hard because that was exactly where it exploded from. When it happened to me. And I bet the same thing with you. I bet it was that heart. Yeah.
Exactly. And when I discovered Taoism and the yin yang symbol, right, which we call the Tai Chi symbol, right, reflecting the balance of nature with these basic forces in nature, compression, expansion. When I discovered that and the language around it, it was just like click, 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 click. Everything made sense in me. And the experience I had giving birth to my daughter was like part of that cohesive experience of life. And I don't know, it may sound, I don't know, that might sound strange, but there was something profound about it that it also led me into discovering more and wanting to make an impact into Western medicine. Because right about the same time, just a couple of years later, my mom passed away with cancer and she had surgery and chemo. And back then it was in the 80s. Everything was much more severe in some ways, not others. But anyway, and I saw how she was treated through that process, and there was just no attention paid to what she was feeling and her connection to her family. And it was just like, it just was so clearly disassociated that I decided, okay, well, this is something that I have to pursue, because like you, it became a passion of mine. I didn't realize it would be my life history, my life practice, but it has been. And I've been grateful because as I continue to teach and practice Tai Chi, Qigong, especially in meditation, I feel like it's helping, with longevity, it's helping wellness, all the things that we all want, as we grow through life. So
isn't it interesting?
Yeah.
Isn't it
Can I,
interesting?
can I just
Oh, I'm
add
sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
something? I'm so sorry. I just wanted to add when I wasn't yet a teacher of the Tai Chi, my grandmother was transitioning, and it took her a week after the stroke to transition, and it was awful to witness. And she was in a facility, and I didn't know Reiki at the time. The only thing I knew was my practice. I didn't know how to comfort her. She couldn't talk. And I just did the practice in her room. And the energy changed. And my grandmother was
Yeah.
like fussing in the bed. She was uncomfortable. And there was nothing I could do. I couldn't even give her a sip of water. It was just horrible. And she settled down, and some of the staff started coming in the room, and they said, what did you do? Because we could feel that outside of the room. And it's so powerful. I mean, I wasn't even a teacher at that point. And now when I teach in the classes, people are trying to settle down at the beginning, and within a couple of minutes of just moving together, it's palpable. You can feel that energetic change.
Siobhan, as we were organizing World Tai Chi Day, I would get emails from Tai Chi teachers, in different countries, and they'd go, wow, it felt so different, when we were doing it on World Tai Chi Day. It was like it had this special feeling to it. And I had felt that as well. Not every World Tai Chi Day, but on some World Tai Chi Days, it was palpable. And, and then when Dr. Nelson and the Global Consciousness Project found out that we had measurably changed coherence and global consciousness, that was such a huge awakening, because it's so easy to discount these, like magical events in our lives. You know what I mean? Because we're not supported when we talk about stuff like this, in mainstream culture. And I think it's so important.
It's changing though, right? I mean, look at what
we're trying to change it
at Harvard. I mean, we
well,
are supported now.
Yeah, right. I mean, what Harvard's doing is incredible. I mean, they're Peter, Wayne, Gloria, yay, it's incredible.
Yeah.
But still, I mean, I've been in major health systems for about 35 years, and I'm still in the cupboard underneath the stairs at Privet, on Privet Drive. It's like we're not up front and mainstream. 30 years ago, when I had doctors in my classes that were just getting off, hypertension meds, heart disease meds, chronic pain meds, diabetes meds, I mean, it was blowing their minds.
Yeah.
None of those doctors 30 years ago ever dreamed that 30 years later, every doctor's prescription pad wouldn't have Whole Foods, Mind, Body, just printed right at the top of the prescription pad, and then they could write other stuff underneath it. You know what I mean? And 30 years later, here we are. So yeah, we're making progress, but when you look at the science, it's not the kind of progress that we should. I mean, it's.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's a lot of pushback from the big pharma and
Yep.
other things.
That is it.
I don't
That's
think we want to go into a political conversation.
Well, it's not political, really. Yeah, I mean, it's not political. It's I mean, it's like it's just common sense.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's the profit motive of healthcare is it's an issue.
It's a real big issue. Yes, yes. I totally agree. And that's why, I'm here with you all today and do the work that I do, with the little bit of influence I have in my community. So here we are. Well, I didn't expect to talk about all that, but where should we go from here?
Well, one thing I was going to mention just a moment ago isn't it interesting how like our children and our parents have such a huge influence on, most of the people that I talk to, that are, among us, mind, body, now we're the elders. I mean, it just seems like 2 weeks ago we were the young Turks, now we're the elders. But I've just heard so many stories from so many people, and yeah, that those formative moments. With me, both of my parents died of heart disease, and when I discovered this stuff, I just became like a Tai Chi Qigong meditation evangelist, And so when I go home for holidays, my relatives see me come in, they go, "Oh no, here he comes again. We're gonna have to hear about all this stuff." And so I was always pushing it, and nobody was hearing it because nobody's doctors were telling them,
Yeah.
And so both of my parents died of heart disease. And then when I started teaching in hospitals, the doctors, they started doing research for me. I had no interest in medical research at that point, but they were so blown away by the benefits they were getting. They started searching their databases and handing me research. And heart disease, of course, was right there at the top. The Tai Chi and Qigong would help heart disease. And so what I started doing, because of what happened to my parents, was I started sending it out to every media institution on the planet, because I knew they were going to want to tell their viewers and their listeners that all those people out there dealing with heart disease, like my parents, could get great benefit from these things.
That's true.
And they weren't the least bit interested. And
I
so then
think
one day I had a meditation, and in the meditation, it said, try to get as many people as you can to a public place doing Tai Chi, and the TV cameras won't be able to resist it because it's going to be so visually spectacular. And then once you get your hands on the microphone, you start telling them about the medical research. And so that's what we did.
At 6. And finally, are you looking for a way to reduce anxiety, high blood pressure, depression?
Every year, the
chronic
world
pain?
celebrates Tai Chi
How about
and
trying
Qigong
Tai
Day
Chi?
and hopes to raise awareness to its
Separate,
health
that's straight
benefits.
out. Shift
Tai
the
Chi
weight
is
back.
believed to boost the
I'm
immune
feeling better
system,
already.
slow the aging process, lower high blood pressure, relieve stress, and improve balance and coordination.
In Kansas City. And then the next year it was World Tai Chi Day. And then so what we did was we created a website to teach Tai Chi and Qigong, mind body teachers all over the planet, how to create a mass public event to get the TV cameras there, and then how to grab the microphone and tell them the science. And we provided everybody with all the science. And so, yeah, and that all came out of my parents,
diabetes,
early demise,
arthritis,
unnecessary
digestive disorders.
I think if we remind people that it's only been in the last 100 years or so that Western medicine, created the pill, not for pregnancy, but the form of the pill. And before that, food was medicine. And
Yeah.
people,
Food and also herbs.
right. And the doctors knew, the area, they knew the people, it was mind, body, and spirit. And we've moved away from that when the physicians started looking at the organs rather than the person as a whole. So if we could remind people of that. But Dr. Gayl, if you don't mind, if we could go back to what makes the extraordinary vessels so extraordinary, and how you utilize them in your practice, that would be great. And for those of you that have questions, towards the end of the program, we will have a time for Q&A. But right now, if Dr. Gayl could speak about the extraordinary vessels, that would be super.
Although if she could, somebody has asked, could you please define it first? Then many people don't even know what the extraordinary vessels are. So could you define it and then tell us what's extraordinary about them? That would be good.
Okay, I will try. So Qi Jing Ba Mai is the Chinese term. That means 8 vessels that are unique or different. And Li Shizhen, who lived around the 1500s, was the first one to find some of the old classical literature and put these ideas in a context that then we can start to study and utilize them. So I mentioned when a baby is still in an embryo and fetus, so in those early developmental phases, the body has a template, like a blueprint of energy that is already there. Another way of understanding Qi, by the way, is as information. So if you think of an information network, we have this intelligence, right? Two cells get together and they start to grow, and suddenly there's a little baby, right? There's an intelligence of life. Within those early stages, this template of energy starts to mobilize. And the first one is, well, we really don't know if it's the first one, but these early like the early geometry, I'll say, of the body mind is the central vessel. This relates to our central nervous system, which, as we know, is the brain and the spinal cord. If you think, and as I'm talking, let's do a little meditation practice, shall we?
Yes, yes.
So find, just notice how you're sitting and relax your lower back and come into your breath. And I'll guide you into the simple practice of breathing into your belly. So this is called the original chi. So we were first connected to our mothers in utero by our navel, right? The umbilical cord at the navel connected to your mom's uterus. So you might even find your belly button and just notice, okay, yes, this was like early development. The Chinese call it original chi. So when the umbilicus is cut, the energy of that comes down and in. So just below and inside from your navel, your belly button, is a place we call the sea of chi, the ocean of energy. And so breathe into that as if you have an ocean of energy inside of you. And this relates to our endocrine organs. It relates to our lower intestines. It relates to our lower abdomen. So we're breathing into our lower abdomen. And as we do that, naturally, the relaxation response starts to elicit. So you're relaxing your diaphragm, you're opening your belly, you're expanding your belly with the inhale. Exhale, it comes a little closer to the spine, and just do a few more breaths like that. Inhale and exhale, expanding your belly. And now you might visualize like a little bead of light, or maybe a pearl, that lives in that sea of chi space, that nest. We'll call it a nest, like an egg in a nest. So this is like the essence of our original chi, our connection to our lineage, as if it was encapsulated there. And we're going to move that down to the bottom of the spine, if you know your coccyx or tailbone, and then let it come up your spine, just very gently up through your spinal cord into your head, and then down the front of the spine. So just breathing, letting the circle of light come up your spine and then down the front. This is called the microcosmic orbit. And this is an internal Qigong practice, or Neigong, which means you're practicing bringing your mental state, your intelligence inside of yourself, and starting to activate these points. If you do yoga, you think of them as the chakras. It's the same thing. They're energy portals or vortex throughout our bodies that relate to our endocrine glands. That's our hormonal system. So originally, this chi relates to our hormones and our central nervous system, the basic system of life that we started with. We're still quite young. There's a force of penetration. That's another one of the vessels. It's called the Chongmai in Chinese, or penetrating vessel, that penetrates this intelligence into the cells of the body. And just like a fetus is growing inside its mama, then the organs start to form. As I said, the heart forms first, the brain and spinal cord are forming, the organs start to form, the limbs, and ultimately the fingers and the toes. So all those cells are dividing and finding their intelligent way of formation and growth patterning. And this Chongmai, the penetrating channel, penetrates through the cellular body, this intelligence, in order to keep it mobilized and contained. There's a horizontal channel we call it the belt, or the daimai in Chinese. The belt channel runs around the body. It runs around the waist, but it also has horizontal rings around all through the body. So it's like a containment and expansion as we're growing and forming and moving energetically through the cellular body. Once these channels have found their way and found their connection to the physical, the more longitudinal channels of the vessels come in, the yin chao and yang chao and yin and yang wei. We call them regulating or directing channels, and they relate more to the limbs, the arms and the legs. And so this is like an early template. If you think about the blueprint of a house, you have lines and a vision of how it's going to form. This is going on in the body with the baby and into the first several years of life. As the baby is born, and this original chi gets settled inside, then the organ meridians start to emerge and form from these extraordinary vessels. So they're extraordinary because they don't link to a particular organ, like the organ meridians, the heart meridian, the lung meridian, kidney, and so forth. They sometimes are called miraculous because they work holistically throughout the whole body. And they can be utilized in treatment to help a person gain more coherence. They can be used in meditation, like we were just doing. So coming back to that central vessel, that microcosmic orbit for a moment, inhaling, bringing the energy up, exhaling, bringing it down. It's somewhat like a piston, like a rising and falling. And then allow that breath to come back and center itself back in that little nest inside and below your navel center. And just know that you can access that energy center, that sea of chi, sea of energy, anytime. And it's one of those places in us we call it also in Chinese philosophy, the lower dantian, or lower elixir field. The belly is this area, relates to the physical, our endocrine system, our physical body. The heart mind, as I said, is the seat of consciousness, relates to our thoughts and our feelings, our mental, emotional state. That's heart mind. That's our second treasure. And the third treasure is here at the third eye, the pineal pituitary gland, that relates more to our divinity and evolution of consciousness. And so the idea with these Qigong and Tai Chi practices and yoga is to align these three energy centers. And so that in life, we can deal with things daily that affect us in a positive way, or deal with adversity and be able to stay coherent, to stay balanced. So the vessels are like I said, the original place where energy starts to form in the body. And then the organ meridians extend out of those vessels. So in order to get to the vessels, and somebody put in the chat about there are acupressure points that help to stimulate or connect to them. But it takes a certain kind of practice and technique, if you will, to access them. We always, in Chinese medicine, you work with the organ meridians first before the vessels, because the vessels come into play when there's multiple systems out of balance, like a syndrome.
Dr. Gayl, that meditation was beautiful.
Yeah.
I know we have a mixed audience, so you did give some visualization of like the microcosmic orbit, how it moves, the circular, penetrating is very deep. Everyone can either get Dr. Gayl's book, The Fabric of the Soul, or you could go online and look up these vessels. But Dr. Gayl, yes, we can talk. The coupled master points might be a little bit too much today. Somebody was writing that in chat, so you definitely know what we're talking about. But Dr. Gayl, would you mind very much if we just pause for 5 minutes so that I could stop the recording, and we'll all take a 5-minute break. And then afterwards, if you could address the joy that may come from accessing the 8 extraordinary vessels. Donna Eden calls them radiant circuits. And so I know you come from a different background, but maybe you could describe that a little bit, and we'll just take a 5-minute break and we'll come back. Okay.
Siobhan,
Yes.
if right before we break, I just want to get this in because it won't make sense when we come back, but it applies to what you're talking about right now. And so in teaching Tai Chi, it's like I'm always looking for these like really kind of tangibly dramatic examples of things. And so the microcosmic orbit, I actually learned that from Ken Cohen. And that was a really beautiful workshop that he did to introduce us to the microcosmic orbit. And so then I started to realize, in Tai Chi and Qigong, we place the tip of our tongue lightly on the gum line behind the top 2 front teeth. That's how we do it anyway. I know everybody's got different ways.
They call that the fire point.
Oh, okay. Yeah, aptly named. And so then when I have a new class, what I started doing was I started teaching them something that I learned from a Chinese teacher who was living in Canada. And it was actually at a national Qigong conference that he taught this to us. And what he did was he had us have a partner and stand, upright, and put our arm out like this, just holding your arm out like that. And then then your partner would push down on your arm, and you would try to stay upright. And and he had us put our feet really close together, because it's really hard to keep your balance when you have your feet close together. And so then your partner would push on your arm, and you'd lose your balance immediately. And so then he told us all, okay, we're going to do it again. This time, those of you that are standing up straight with your arm out, smash your tongue up against the roof of your mouth really hard. And so we all smashed our tongue up against the roof of the mouth really hard. They can't pull you over. They cannot pull you over. I have a video on YouTube that shows how to do this, but it's a mind blower. It's a mind blower.
So when you do that, when you touch the tip of your tongue to the roof of your mouth, it connects these 2 orbits.
Okay, there you go. You're starting to lose your balance. Okay, now, same position, everything's the same. One difference. Smash your tongue up against the roof of your mouth. Smash your tongue up against the roof of your mouth. Like this.
Oh, okay.
But as hard as you can. Okay, a lot of resistance here.
The Renmai and Dumai, the conception and governing vessel. And so when those vessels are connected, then we're more rooted into the physical.
Yeah. It was powerful. It blew my mind when I physically felt
Yeah,
that
it
power.
is amazing. And I just want to say one more quick thing before the break, is that the focus of this microcosmic orbit is to align yourself with the cosmos, because as I said earlier, the ancients understood that we have these cyclical patterns in life. And so they found them in the body. And this is the main one, the microcosmic orbit. It runs just as the earth rotates around the sun. So it creates a sort of a gravity, if you will, for the mind in the body.
Beautifully said. I'm going to put us on pause. We'll be back shortly. And thank you, Dr. Gayl.
Yep.
Welcome
right.
back, everybody. Hi, Dr. Gayl.
Hello. So you had asked a question and used the word joy.
Yes.
So
And I understand, please, I understand everybody comes to this from a different perspective. And I was just wondering, like I'm coming from Donna Eden's work, and she calls them the radiant circuits because she sees that when people tap into them, they radiant, joy. And that, just very briefly, that's what caught my attention when I started learning these practices. Is I came at a younger age with no chronic complaint, no ailment, no chronic disease. But what I found was it changed me emotionally. I would walk into class, angry, upset about what happened during the day, and I would leave feeling joyful, not ecstatic, but feeling like, oh, today wasn't such a bad day. And I didn't understand how that was working. And then when Donna Eden was explaining about the 8 extraordinary vessels, which she calls the radiant circuits, when I do work with them, I do feel good, and they're part of the Tai Chi and Qigong, whether you know about them or not, you're activating them. So could you address that, or how do you interpret that?
Well, this is from a Chinese medical perspective. Joy is our natural state. Mm. And I think many perspectives would agree. When you look at a baby, a newborn baby, there's joy there, right? When they're, if they're happy and their diaper's not wet and all that, just naturally they exude joy. They laugh. And so what happens when we practice and these mind-body practices and awaken our chi, that's what we do when we first align ourselves, breathe, right? We start to awaken the chi. It brings the energy forward, and it motivates us to move into our natural state, which is joy. The natural state of the heart is joy. So the joy resides in the heart, we say in Chinese medicine, but it truly is like our natural state. We come back to it. And so opening the vessels brings us to that connection or reconnection with our original state, which is joyful. I find doing Tai Chi and doing also working with the organ meridians, anytime you open the channels, you feel lighter, you feel more flexible, you feel just freer of spirit. And that's a joyful experience. And so joy just will emerge with these practices naturally. That's how I see it.
Gayl, yeah, Siobhan had talked about, was it Barbara Eden who could see the energy? Is that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, when you do Tai Chi and Qigong long enough, you're going to have these little glimpses of kind of light. I think, when you're not quite looking at it. But I had one experience in my life where I actually could see energy. And I wanted to ask you something about this, Gayl, because you're a lot more familiar with the Chinese terms and the these concepts than I am. When we trained with all these things, but we didn't use the Chinese terms. So I'm still learning a lot about the terminology. But what happened was, it was the first time that I'd ever flown anywhere. After I got married, we flew back to Hong Kong so I could meet my wife's family. She was from Hong Kong, and so I had just started doing Tai Chi and Qigong meditation maybe about a year before, and I was trying really hard to learn my Tai Chi long form so that I could impress my mother-in-law, because she had done Tai Chi when my wife was really young. Yeah. So for that year, I was really pretty immersed in it. And anyway, when we got to Hong Kong, I had something that I had never heard of before. It's called jet lag. And I had it really bad because I got really dehydrated on the flight and I was drinking alcohol. And so when I got there, man, it hit me like a ton of bricks. And so what happened was I slept for about 30 hours. And then after that, I would fall asleep when everybody else went to sleep. But then I'd wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and I could not go back to sleep. In-laws, they had a house up on a hill overlooking Hong Kong. They weren't wealthy, but they were really smart to have grabbed that piece of land after World War II. And so anyway, they had a garden, which nobody in Hong Kong has. So I just, at 3 o'clock in the morning, I went out and I would practice, this Neigong meditation and moving Qigong meditation and Tai Chi. And I do it for hours. And I'm not a dedicated practicer. I'm not one of those Tai Chi teachers that's like doing this stuff hours and hours every day. So that was like a new experience for me, and more intense than anything I've ever done since then. And so for about 2 weeks, I was doing like 4 hours of meditative mind-body Tai Chi type experiences. And one day we went to the harbor, and we're sitting at the harbor, and it was a gray day. So the sky was about the same color as the ocean. And so we're sitting there, and they had like a little cafe. So we're having some breakfast. And I looked around and I could see this big plume of energy coming, just off the top of people's heads. Now, I don't know if there's a Chinese term for that energy center above the head. But we called it center.
It is. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, we called it center too. But anyway, that day I could see these plumes of energy, and it lasted for like 20 minutes while I was waiting for the ferry to come in. And then once the ferry came in, it's like we got busy with the tickets and it was all gone. I thought I was going to be able to see it forever, because I could see it for 20 minutes, and people would walk by and I'd see this big plume of energy. And what stuck with me from that experience was, looking back, I realized that the people that were in the moment, the people that were present, now they could have been just sitting there, just chilling out, enjoying the day, or maybe they were in a conversation with somebody. But the people that were very present, they had these huge energy plumes coming off of them. Now, the businessmen that had their fists wrapped around the handle of their briefcase and were thinking about the meeting that they were going to have in Kowloon on the other side of the bay, theirs was real little, real tight, real constricted. The ones that were in the moment, enjoying the experience of that moment, had these huge energy plumes coming off. And so anyway.
Yeah, I see energy on and off. Sometimes when I do acupuncture, I can see, like when I stimulate a needle, another one, I can see the line of energy between the points. Or
one thing that one effect that had on me after I had that experience was, all of a sudden I realized that the halos in the paintings,
Yes.
was real. It was real.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
I just wanted to say, in December, we will have Donna Eden and her husband, David Feinstein, on this program. And what's interesting, again, we have a diverse audience, but everybody can sense energy, but it may be different for each of us. So some people taste it, and I've had some clients who were nurses who actually could taste cancer if they looked at their patients with cancer. It had a palpable taste. Other people see it, smell it, feel it, hear it, have a sense of knowing. It can be cultivated. But according to Donna Eden, we all had this gift at a young age. And if we kept talking to our children about the colors they see, that we would have kept this into adulthood. And she's actually had a group of young people that she kept training into seeing this. And when they became teenagers, they still had that ability. So it's something we can regain.
There's
Yeah.
a martial arts group.
I agree.
There's a martial arts group. I think they're in Utah, and I saw a documentary about them. I actually contacted them, but then the pandemic hit and I got sidetracked. But anyway, they were teaching kids how to sense the energy of color. And they had kids sitting there flipping through, they would shuffle up the deck of color cards, and they had kids sitting there that were telling the color, and they had a blindfold on. It was the wildest thing I ever saw.
Yeah, we could talk all day about energy and experiences. I've had a lot of them, but I'm noticing the time, and I'm thinking this might be a good time to take questions if anybody has questions.
Do you want to just address very quickly a little bit more about the global coherence and how we never even touched on the HeartMATH? I wanted to see
Right.
I wanted to see what the device actually. Can you just address that quickly? The HeartMATH.
Okay. Yes. So HeartMATH has just recently put out a new and improved sensor, and it looks like this. This is the piece that attaches to your clothes, and then this piece attaches to your ear.
Oh, it attaches. Okay, I've never actually seen the device. Okay, yes.
Yeah. And then you have an app on your phone, and you download that app. It's free. And then this is a Bluetooth sensor. So then you hook up your Bluetooth, and the app on the phone will start to show you first your pulse rate, and then your HRV, your heart rate variability. And the heart rate variability is the distance between two beats of the heart. So, our heart beats at 60 or 70 or 80 beats a minute, whatever, but the distance between the beats will vary. And it varies depending on our physiology, our mental state, and then also activity. If you're exercising, your heartbeat's going to be faster and the distance will probably be shorter. Well, what HeartMATH did is it creates a sine rhythm, these beats, this distance between the beats over time. And that's your heart rate variability. And it's used a lot in Western science as well. But once you have the sine rhythm of your heart rate variability, you can see whether your system's under stress or not. Because when we're under stress, it tends to be very jagged. When we're in a state of coherence, which means that the mind, the heart, the physiology are working together in sync, you might say, just as like rowers, have you ever seen a scull, like a group of rowers, right? So you've got this group of rowers, if they're all rowing at the same pace and same rhythm, it cuts through the water very easily. But if people are off rhythm, then you're not going to get off. And that's what happens in our bodies and our minds, right? And so the HeartMATH tool is a body or biofeedback mechanism to teach you how to breathe and relax and get yourself in synchronization, in coherence. And it works beautifully.
And now, can an individual buy that device, or do we have to go to a practitioner?
No, you can go to the website and purchase it.
Really?
If you, since I'm a trainer, I order them. I just ordered one the other day for a client. And then I set up little meetings to help people understand because there's different techniques that you can use. HeartMATH has its own system, right? And so in the beginning, it's a little bit tricky to kind of get an idea of the whole thing. But if you just have a session with the practitioner in the beginning, it's very helpful. So I recommend that.
Is
But
that,
anybody can order them from the website.
is
And
that,
I put the website in the chat.
Oh,
I put it in the chat. I've put the
Okay, yeah.
website in the chat.
HeartMath.com. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah,
and then
HeartMath.
HeartMath does
HeartMath.org.
studies on this
So
beyond.
the HeartMath is started by a group of scientists in California about in the 1970s. And what they realized was that our hearts are the main organ of the body that regulates the nervous system. Well, as a Chinese medical practitioner, we already know this because in Chinese medicine, they say the heart is the emperor or the monarch of the body. And so when I discovered HeartMath, and they have all this science, all these evidence-based studies proving that if you find connection to your heart and allow this coherence to move through you, all of the other organs entrain themselves. And so it's a way to move people out of extreme anxiety states and habits to understanding that they have control over their mental, emotional state. So it's another way, just like we do these body-mind practices of Qigong and Tai Chi. It's a different system, but it's another way that produces the same result.
Gayl, you were like the poster child of what we were hoping to produce with this monthly program, because you realize as a practitioner and a teacher how valuable that science that HeartMath did is to you and your students. And
Yes.
we've been trying to convey that to the Tai Chi and Qigong world because, a lot of people go, well, I already know how to do this stuff. I get the benefit from it. I don't need to know how it works. Knowing how it works is a powerful thing.
Very powerful. And I got to tell you, as a meditator, I thought, oh, I'm, same thing. I know this stuff. But when I got my first sensor and I hooked it into my iPhone, and I saw on the screen that actually I wasn't gaining the physiological benefit in my meditations. And I thought, wow. And so what it did for me is it really gave me a way to watch how my internal systems were working, and I could see it. And once you could see it, then you have more reference point for, okay, this is how it really is supposed to feel in order for my cells to gain benefit. Because excuse me a minute, there's a level of coherence that you have to reach above a certain point in order for your physiology to really start healing itself, where inflammation goes down, all the digestion, everything starts to increase. And so to me, it was a very powerful system to bring into my practice already, and then share it with my clients and students.
I had a very similar experience when I discovered the Muse headband that could read the brainwaves. Yeah, because with Tai Chi and Qigong, we have this song, this Wu Wei, this sense of flow that we go into where you let go of control, and but it's like I never really understood it in the way that I could until I saw it with the technology, because the technology would tell you right when you're in alpha state and right when you're out of alpha state. And so then you go, oh, that's what that feels like.
Yes.
That's what it feels like to be in alpha state. And I just wanted to mention one beautiful thing that we got from the research director at HeartMATH Institute, Dr. McCratty, when we had him on.
Yeah.
And he said, that frequency of the heart rate that you were talking about, when we go into when we go into that heart-brain coherence, he said that's when we're in alignment with the Earth's frequency.
That's right.
Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah, that's
Well,
right.
we're running out of time, so we're going to swing to Mary Jo, who's been dying to ask Dr.
Hey, Mary Jo.
Gayl a question.
Oh, sure.
I really love the points that you're bringing actually in synthesis with the whole team. And one of the things that I'd like if you to elaborate more, because we keep talking about and using the word mind body, and then we're just saying spirit every so often. And yet, spirit is a huge consciousness that really shapes and helps direct the entire energy system. And in healthcare, we have minimized because we have gone the route of pharmacology. What does the doctor, quote unquote, say and do? But when we have gone back to the indigenous teachings, and of course, Chinese medicine is huge, but I've worked in multiple other countries and they have different vocabulary to describe the same things in the process. Right. So if you could say a little bit more, you've said it at different times, but if you would elaborate more about the spiritual aspects and how you work with that.
Well, I really appreciate you bringing that up, Mary Jo. It's true. And I think that what I've noticed, I have gone to just this mind body term because it's more what the general public can relate to. Sometimes when you bring in the idea of spirit, then people get like, oh, wait, don't mess with my religion or something, you know. But to me, knowing that we are all spiritual beings, and I truly believe that spiritual discord is probably what, or the origin of physical ailments. And if we connect more with our spirit and the spirit of, like I said earlier, this idea of joy as being our natural state, that's a spiritual state when we feel joy. Wouldn't you agree? Like,
absolutely.
It's not like it's out there or or unknown. It's just something we all have. It's when we feel happy and joyful and our hearts are open. That's spirit. That's just living a spiritual life.
And when you mentioned that word, this picture that I'm going to show was done by the a group in Australia, Frame of Mind. And when they type in the word joyful, this is what appears on the screen. This manifestation of the energy as it's shown. And if you look at that, and of course, if you hold it in different directions, it begins to fit with different kind of theoretical modalities of how they work with concepts, etc. And so, and when Bill brought up the issue of our children and needing to connect them more with things, that's one of the things even the National Institute of Health in their new plan for up to 2027, I think it is, includes working with children. And if we don't have a concept of that doesn't frighten people, because you're right, I agree with you. When you say the word spiritual, people want to run the other way. But the word emotion really anchors in our energy system.
Yeah.
When there's a mismatch between the words that people say, what they're trying to convey, and the energy they're sending. So the other two aspects, the spirit and the emotion, are huge.
Yeah, very huge. And when I say mind, I always think of the emotions, mind, body, or, includes the emotions, or heart, mind. But let me just say one other thing about spirit. So another theoretical model in Chinese medicine is that each of the organs has a spirit to them. And if you consider the heart, like we use the term Shen is a Chinese character that translates to mean spirit, or this essence of the heart. And each of the main organs, the lungs, kidney, liver, spleen, has a spiritual nature that relates to our mind and an aspect of ourselves. So, for example, the spleen, which includes the pancreas, the term yi, which Bill, you probably recognize, it's also used in Tai Chi, yi, yi, it's called mind or intention. That's the spiritual nature of the spleen organ. And what it refers to is like a higher mind. So when we have root in our digestion, because those organs help with digestion, that's healthy and balanced, our mind is clear to make decisions, to know what we're going to eat that's good for us, not, get into the worry, which can throw that part out. And so there is this whole body of knowledge around the spirit of the organs that together make up our soul. And that's the reason I actually use the term fabric of the soul in my book, The Extraordinary Vessel, which, by the way, I saw in the chat, it was written for lay people. It can be used as a resource for practitioners too, but I wanted to bring it into language that anybody could gain insight from. And this, so the spiritual nature of us is really what we're talking about when we talk about meridians or vessels or, all of it. It's just like a ray, of light in the sun, you might say. So every culture may have different terminology, but you're right, like we all understand this concept, and we all have old practices that help us to recapture or reconnect with that spiritual nature of ourselves. And when we're reconnected with our spiritual nature, then we have the heart to be on shows like this, right? To share with others knowledge and experience and wisdom. So I think it is really the essence of what we're talking about. And thanks for bringing it up.
Thank you.
Dr. Gayl, this has just been wonderful. I did put a little shout out to people if there were any more questions.
There's one thing that I just wanted to do real quick. So, Dr. Gayl, I've begun to kind of have a tradition here of, at this point, this is where I ask, can we add your photo and bio to our list of leading scientists and health and education experts who are in support of the United Nations resolution advocating mind-body education K through 12 as a non-mandatory suggestion to global public education?
Oh, absolutely. It would be my honor. Thank you. Yes.
Well, thank
100%.
you, Dr. Gayl. We know how busy you are, and you've been so wonderful explaining so many different aspects of your tremendous practice. So thank you for taking time to be with us. We appreciate it. We've asked everybody if they could please sign the petition. Look, if you can't donate, please just go to the website and sign the petition. We really feel that these mind-body practices not only will help everyone for their well-being and health, but also cost savings on so many different levels, not just health, but also making a more compassionate world for us all. So I would like to personally thank Dr. Gayl on behalf of all of us. And CJ, do you have any parting words?
No, just that this is all absolutely fascinating. And one of the things that I find most fascinating is the scientific underpinnings of all of these various practices, and, to identify that, we have this thousands of years of discussion about these things, and it's only because we haven't looked at it before. But now that we're looking at, well, what does that actually mean? And people like Dr. Gayl Hubatch is just absolutely the bridge between those two worlds, and I really appreciate your work.
Yeah, thank you. And I forgot to mention, I am starting an online course on the organ meridians and the spirit of the organs, like we were just talking about. So it's, and I'm going to be recording it. So if people can't make the online, I can send them recordings of the information.
Please let us know that so that we could let people know about that.
Yeah, it actually starts tomorrow night. It's Monday nights,
Wow.
6:30 Central Time.
Do you have, should they just go to your website?
Yeah, well, honestly, my website's a little out of date, but if
How
you
would
can
they register?
give them my email, that would be more direct. Yeah.
The Blue Heron?
Yeah, Gayl, Gayl, there's no E on Gayl, by the way, Gayl at blueheroncenter.com, just like the bird, Blue Heron.
Blue Heron. And I also like to point out, we have two more guest speakers. Thank you, CJ. She put your email address in the chat. We have Dr. Well, I keep saying Dr. Leonard Perlmutter, who is also Ram Len, who is the
American Meditation Institute.
Meditation Institute, thank you, who's very well known, and I was so amazed by him. He is our guest speaker in November, and in December we have Dr. David Feinstein and Donna Edens. So we are bringing some great speakers in, such as Dr. Gayl, and again, this is all volunteer. It's the four of us. Angela is somewhere in the background, I'm sure, but it's the four of us doing all this work. So please help if you can.
Yep. So yeah, if you can donate.
Actually, we have to say it's mostly Siobhan. So I think we should all give Siobhan a hand. She really does the majority of the work for these things. She is wonderful, and I am so pleased that she's willing to put in the work.
So to recap what Siobhan said, donate if you can, and even if you can't donate, sign the petition and spread the petition. We got to get 100,000 signatures before we're going to put all the effort into contacting all the UN missions. We need to have 100,000 soul force behind us. Gayl, I just had one suggestion. As you were going through the meditation, I just had this really, it just felt like that should be a meditation for every woman who finds out they're pregnant. That would be a great meditation to be listening to while you're going through the gestation period. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right about that.
Well, thank you, everybody. Have a great evening. Thank you again, Dr. Gayl.
It's been my pleasure.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, CJ. Thank you, all of you, for attending today. Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now.
Breathe in each other, there is no